What's up, y'all, and welcome to our third episode of Center Stage. I'm your host, Aaron Barton, joined by my co-hosts,
Spencer Ball
and JP Barry.
And we're here to once again debate our sports of the week and outlooking some sports to come. So, our first topic, we are here to congratulate and be so proud of our women's basketball team. Go Cox! We were able to pull out a championship win in honestly just dominant fashion. We were able to just be dominant all season. We never let go of that number one spot. And Aaliyah Boston and Henny, they were our just swagger pieces. As I've said, the Joe Shiesties of women's college basketball, man, they get everybody excited, and we love to rally behind them and our entire team. Dawn is also so exciting and just such an awesome character. She's so charismatic and great to get behind. So, Spencer, I know you were there, so talk a little bit about that atmosphere after the fact and just the game in general.
Yeah, so definitely knocking off previously undefeated UConn in the title game, 11-0, now 11-1, and Dawn's undefeated in the title game. It's great to see, but really, I mean, just dominant performance, not only in the game, but just the entire season. You know, you had two kind of bad losses, Missouri and Kentucky, undefeated against top 25 teams, 14-0, which is unheard of. I mean, nobody's really doing that consistently, and really just, of course, Aaliyah Boston sweeping National Player of the Year awards, Dawn winning most of the Coach of the Year awards. It's just great to see. And in the title game, you know, as you mentioned, kind of Henny being the swagger pieces. Every time she does a little Archer thing after a three, I kind of go crazy. But more importantly, what we saw after the championship win, just absolute mayhem in Columbia. I know I brought the camera to the fountain, and we got almost 20 minutes of just fans interviewing, just yelling, craziness, you know.
Anarchy.
Looking like Michael Phelps out there in the Teacup fountain. Not the cleanest water of all time,
No.
but it was great seeing just the fans unite around South Carolina, and more importantly, women's sports. Shows that we're definitely building something special here. And with the WNBA draft next Monday, and I haven't heard of anyone declaring yet, we could be running it back with one of the best teams of all time.
And that's something I'm really interested to see. And I just want to quick talk about how great South Carolina's defense was in the Final Four in the national championship game. They completely shut down Haley Van Lith of Louisville. I think she didn't score until like the third or fourth quarter of that game. UConn, their big three, two of them were held scoreless, and Paige Beckers was really held in check outside of the second quarter, where she almost single-handedly brought UConn back into the game before South Carolina kind of got the stiff arm on them and extended it back to a much more reasonable margin and really just kind of put it away, I think is the best way to say it. And the defense was just so impressive against two of the best offenses in all of women's college basketball, Louisville and UConn, because even though they shut down the star players, they didn't get beat by some role player. Like in March, you always have like the guy or the person who averaged 6 points a game who scores like 30, and they become the hero of the tournament. South Carolina didn't let that happen to them, which I think was probably one of the biggest reasons they won it all, because they held the stars in check and they held the entire roster in check and just took care of business.
Yeah, it was definitely great to see, and you know, if we keep returning these pieces, it's looking bad for every other women's basketball team in the nation, because we put together a 35-2 season, and if we don't lose anyone, we might turn the 2 into a 0 next year. So,
and to go on to the men's side of the bracket, you know, it's, as you guys probably could guess, it's tough for me to talk about, and a little bit less tough for Spencer to talk about. But you know, to start on, you know, the games overall, I'd still in significant remorse of my Duke Blue Devils. It's a sad way to see Coach K go out, who, in fact, he is not coming back. I can promise y'all, he handed it to Shire in the beginning of the season, and he's staying where he is. He wanted Shire to be the man, and it's his time. And even though his last two losses, well, two of his most important losses, because Virginia Tech did beat him, but were to the hands of first-year coach Hubert Davis and the UNC Tar Heels. I think he still was able to bring his team to being one of the 4 best teams in college basketball in his last season, which is still incredibly impressive, even if they didn't close it out. They lost due to really poor free throw shooting, really poor three-point shooting, which UNC played great defense on. Leaky Black locked AJ Griffin, which was tough for me to see. And overall, Paulo was doing a lot. There was a lot of fouls called on our big men, which they did deserve it, but it was a very, very tightly called game. And the only real problems I had with the refs were overcalling on both sides, just because I thought that in a game of that atmosphere, I think that you should let the boys play a little bit more than they were. And B, I will say the only obvious miss was with about 1:18 to go. RJ Davis went to shoot a floater, and they called a foul on Jeremy Roach on that shot. It was obvious not a foul, but at the angle that the ref saw it, I understand the call, but it was clearly not a foul, and you can't miss that in a Final Four game. Duke was up 1, and that drastically changed the outcome of the game. Obviously, there were other things that did so that had an impact, but it did not at all mean that if that wasn't called, Duke would have won. But because I hate hypotheticals, but that's the truth. Kansas is a great team. Shout out to them. I still think Duke could beat them. But I think this is the best run that UNC's had of the 21st century. Hubert Davis is an incredible coach. I will say I doubt him at the beginning of the season with how rocky they are, but man, they peaked at the right time. I can't wait to see what he's going to do down the road, and I can't wait to see how him and Shire play together. So, yeah.
Yeah, as a neutral viewer, I thought the UNC Duke game was one of the best Final Four games we've ever seen. I mean, back and forth, really good basketball. There were some moments where neither team could buy a bucket, but there was great defense being played there too. Caleb Love in the Final Four was outstanding. Armando Bacot, just huge shout out to him, playing through the ankle injury and the wear and tear of just going through the tournament and making it to the Final Four on top of an ankle injury, and he just shrugged it off and went back in and played outstanding down the stretch to secure that win for North Carolina. Really impressed by him. And on the other side, Kansas, the story is always their offense, because coming out of the Big 12, they're just scoring and putting up these crazy numbers. They have these NBA draft picks. And I thought it was really interesting that the year Kansas wins the national title, they don't have some crazy consensus, huge NBA prospect like Joel Embiid or even Devontae Graham. There's not, Remy
Mario Chalmers.
Yeah, Mario Chalmers. But Remy Martin is an outstanding player, and I think he'll be good in the NBA. I believe he has eligibility, though, so unless he comes back. But just really impressed by Kansas. Their defense really just shut down a Villanova offense that's almost impossible to just disrupt because of how heavy they are in veteran leadership and how fundamental they play. They have guards posting up, dribbling back to the basket, and then they find it's like 1980s basketball, but it's entertaining because of how well Villanova executes it. But the way Kansas just disrupted that was super impressive. And I kind of thought they'd beat the winner of Duke UNC just because of how the emotional and physical toll of that Final Four game on the other side. But
Duke would have won.
But
I think UNC at full health, I think, could have won the game. You saw it come down to a 3-point game.
I agree.
If Armando's not playing on 1 foot, Manick's not seeing stars from the 2 elbows he caught earlier in the game.
And Puff Johnson literally leaving it all on the floor.
Yeah,
and then some.
You see the heart this team has, though. They're called the Iron Five. Great nickname. But just because each starter puts in so many minutes, because really not a ton of depth. But it was, I almost agree with you with the best team in the 21st century, at least the most exciting to watch.
Right.
Because in 2009, you see Psycho T just dismantled about every team in the tournament. And then in 2017, the revenge tour, but that team always had it. You weren't like, they were preseason favorites, a 1 seed. But this year, most people had them losing to Baylor, but they definitely put on a great performance. And I think, it was definitely nice as a fan seeing them take down Coach K in his final game. Of course, for me, I love to see it. I know you hate to see it, but it's, that's the way basketball works. But as you mentioned, I think the Hubert Davis and John Shire rivalry is definitely something that's going to last for a while, because a lot of people weren't, I don't want to say skeptics, but we're just unsure of how Hubert would coach the team. And I think definitely his leadership shined in the tournament and showed,
For sure.
they wouldn't have been there without him. So it was great to see, and definitely a bright future for both teams, which leads us into our next subject. Picks for next year, way too early.
It's really predicated on who's going to come back, who's going to go to the NBA, the transfer portal, recruiting classes, who's going to be an immediate impact. I have two teams that one of them is very hinged on players returning and the other not so much. The first team is UCLA. They kind of almost, you could say, underperformed this year because of how lofty their expectations were coming off the Final Four run they had in 2021. But they still had a great season, and I think that every single player on the roster has eligibility to come back. Jaime Jaquez and Johnny Juzang, they could all come back, and the recruiting class coming in. I think UCLA could be the best team in college basketball next year. Really battle-tested in the Pac-12 because the Pac-12 is really on the rise with Arizona, especially in Southern Cal and Oregon.
Coach of the Year of Arizona as well.
Yes, very, very impressed by his job. They're building back the Wildcats to the program that we all kind of have grown to expect them to be. But like I said, UCLA. But my other team, Arkansas, the Razorbacks, Eric Musselman, outstanding head coach. I think he's what people think Nate Oates is in terms of like really high quality SEC young coaches. But I think Arkansas is poised to take a Texas Tech-esque jump in program quality because they have the rabid fan base, the great home court, the outstanding players and coaching, the incoming recruiting class. I'm sure we all watched it when they took down Auburn and Fayetteville and Kentucky. That place was just erupting. Musselman went into the crowd and like got shirtless, and the energy around that program is almost infectious, and it's shown on the recruiting trail and how they performed in the tournament this year. They could get guys back from this run, but it speaks to the quality of their program that they aren't hinging on it to already be a top 5 team in most way too early top 25s I've seen.
I want to look at the two teams we've mentioned so far being Duke and UNC. With UNC, obviously they're losing one of their 1A and 1B options as being Brady Manick because, as a 6th-year senior, he was incredible. I'll give him that.
Unrivaled flow.
Absolutely. And
look.
I think that he'll actually be a really solid role player in the league for a long time if he chooses to do so. But besides that, he's going to be gone, but it's all obviously dependent on, Caleb Love and Baycott returning because they have, I think it's a 3-man 4-star class that's coming in, which guys that'll probably be good in a few years for them, but nobody that's probably going to make an instant impact. They might be looking at a guy like Seth Trimble, their 4-star point guard, coming in to, I think he's kind of a combo guard to make some impact offensively, but still a good chance he won't be able to instantly. So it's going to be dependent on if Love returns, then, how does he grow? How does he get better in the offseason? Because he was a 5-star coming in, and there's been many times we've been able to see that talent shine, but it's just never been consistent. So if he can be consistent, then I think that he does have lottery pick potential. But right now, although some people say that he has that, it's a very slim chance that he's going to be there. So, and Baycott being, he's a great college center because he's a great rim protector, great rebounder, and very good interior offense. He's also really good at defense without fouling. But if you take those skills to the NBA, many centers are already good at those things. It doesn't make you stand out. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Baycott back for another year either. So we see those two guys come back, and that team could very well run it back and get just as far, if not further, than they did this year. But my second team is my Duke Blue Devils, just because, as JP said off the air, they're good every single year. But, it's a tournament run is going to be dependent on if Wendell Moore and Jeremy Roach decide to go or return, because there are big veteran guys, and Roach would easily solve our point guard issue we currently will have going into next class. If he doesn't come back, we'll be looking at either Jalen Blake stepping up and becoming the starting point guard, or trying to look for a guy in the transfer portal. And if he doesn't, and if Roach does return, that would be massive. He took a big leap towards the end of the season. I probably see him taking another one in the offseason. Moore did the same thing. He's gotten better each year he's been with us, and I think that he's only going to keep getting better. He won the Julius Erving Small Forward of the Year award for college, I guess I'd just say. And overall, that team is going to be dependent on what veterans they return, because while we have a very talented team, you're going to need that veteran presence, and in college you can't win without it. So those are my two teams to watch going into next season.
Okay, so I was going to say Arkansas as well, but you've already touched on them. They've got tons of talent that possibly can return. So if they do return talent in addition to their insane recruiting class, I think they definitely have a threat to take it home next year. But I do want to touch on UNC a little bit. I think Baycott will likely stay another year. I think this tournament run is huge for the program because it shows not only that Hubert Davis is more than capable, but it also shows that what they can do as an 8 seed with really 5 players that play the entire game. Now imagine you start adding some more recruits in there, get some more depth.
Right.
Like, I think the 2022 class, as you mentioned, for UNC isn't as strong, but the 2023 class, now that they've proven themselves under the new head coach, is definitely looking pretty good. Gigi Jackson, deciding between UNC Duke here. Love to see him in 2 of those 3 programs.
They already got. I need to do my homework, but I forgot. You might know it. I think he's the highest ranked point guard in 2023 who's already committed to UNC. Mm-hmm. He's the number 10 overall recruit. That's going to be huge for them.
Yeah. I can't think of his name right now, but yeah, the program is definitely trending upwards after kind of no one being sure of Hubert's capabilities. But I think if Love stays a year, I think we'll definitely see him become more consistent because he kind of showed it in the tournament before the final game. I mean, he played really well, and then in the championship game, obviously didn't shoot well.
Got a little hurt too. So
yeah. But I mean, of course, you got to feel bad for the guy.
Right.
Basically, I mean, we're not there without him by any chance. In the UCLA game, you saw him absolutely just take over the game. One of the most disgusting one-half performances I've ever seen. So I think UNC definitely has a lot of potential next year, depending on if those 2 guys are to stay. But one team I'm really interested in, you're going to love this. How about the Seton Hall Pirates hiring one of the...
Shaheen Holloway.
Shaheen Holloway, of course, my favorite coaches from this tournament. You just love, he's got swagger. Every interview he had, he's just like showing no emotion, and it's so funny to see.
I loved his interview, like you said, the interview. Mm-hmm. Someone asked him about his career at Seton Hall when he was the point guard there, led him to the Sweet 16 2000. He was like, I was pretty good as a player. And that's been in like every single hype video that Seton Hall has put out after the hire.
Yeah.
And it cuts to him streaking across the court to lay it up to beat Oregon in the NCAA tournament at the buzzer. But continue on.
Well, I was going to say, of course, they're probably going to have to look to the transfer portal a little bit, but we saw the big trio from
they might get Doug.
Yep, the St. Peter's trio, Doug Etter, Daryl Banks, and I forgot his first name, but Lee. They're all in the portal. It wouldn't surprise me if they follow the coach to the friendly confines of Seton Hall. But that team's going to be interesting to watch just because we've seen them before, if they do manage to.
And they have returning talent, Jameer Harris. He's one of the best talented three-point shooters. Kaderi Richmond, you might remember him from Syracuse. He transferred there, and second half of the season was one of the best point guards in the entire Big East, dishing out almost 8 assists a game down the stretch. But one big thing about Shaheen Holloway is how he can recruit. Bringing the talent to St. Peter's that he did, St. Peter's program that hadn't been in the NCAA tournament since 2011.
With no star recruits.
Zero star recruits. At Seton Hall, he really hit the local recruiting market hard. He got Angel Delgado from the Bronx, Isaiah Whitehead, almost said Isaiah Whiteside, Isaiah Whitehead, and Adama Sanogo, and Miles Powell from Trenton. I mean, he took the world by storm in 2019, and multiple other, Miles Kale, probably don't remember him as much as Miles Powell, but there's just so many recruits that he still has fingerprints on. He would come to Seton Hall games as the head coach at St. Peter's, and after the game, everyone would run up to him and be like, "We miss you, coach." And that's just something I think it really shows the lengths to which he builds relationships with his players. And I really like that you brought that up. That really made my day.
Yeah, and of course, we're also going to touch on the women's side of college basketball. Aaron's rocking the shirt. Of course, probably all of our favorites for next year. We wish we could show you the lovely, gloomy Columbia Wednesday we're having right now. But I'm picking the Gamecocks to take it home for the second straight year. Of course, as President Pastides, and everyone likes to make the joke, it's a dynasty. But it truly is, because she's, I think, cemented her legacy as right now the best coach in women's college basketball.
Yeah, for
we
sure.
have the best player in women's college basketball who is not yet declared. And, I mean, if she comes back next year, we're dangerous. I'm picking the Gamecocks.
Easy money.
Yeah, I'm not going to go against the grain, be a contrarian. But a team to watch out for next year, I think, who's going to be really good, kind of making the jump back to where they were as a program, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They were incredibly young this year and outperformed preseason expectations. They were a 5 seed and were a fourth quarter collapse away from going to the Elite Eight against UConn after they dropped 102 points on Oklahoma in Norman in the round of 32. Incredibly young team, lots of true freshmen. Olivia Miles, one of the best point guards in all of women's college basketball. The recruiting class has been awesome. Coach Ivey, the mother of Jaden Ivey of Purdue, a lot of Notre Dame fans were like, how come he went to Purdue and didn't come to Notre Dame? His mom coaches here. I wouldn't want to play where my mom coaches either in college. But
You got to celebrate something.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're obviously not going to be like Skylar Diggins or Arike Ogunbowale tier team next year, but I think they're a team that could easily make a run to the Elite Eight or their Final Four and maybe match up with South Carolina. I think that would be a really fun clash of styles because Notre Dame, they're going to run the score up. They're going to shoot so many threes. They really get active. They thrive in chaos. And South Carolina is a lot like, all right, try and beat us. You won't. Try and drive inside, and you're going to hurt. And I think that'd be an awesome clash of styles.
Yeah, so we're going to hand it over to Spencer, who's going to talk about our quick little commercial break.
Yeah, so right after, we're going to take a quick break. Preview Thursday Night Snaz. They film tomorrow here at 7. It's going to be live on Facebook and on the YouTube channel after it's uploaded. So be sure to check that out, and we'll be right back.
Live from the Kennedy Greenhouse Studio.
This is Student News at 7.
Alrighty. Now, after we've returned after our quick little break, we are here to discuss 3 NBA topics. Well, one topic, but our 3 questions that we all are going to answer. It is the team we are polling for, which is probably all going to be the same. The team we think will win it all, and our dark horse. We've already mentioned a dark horse in the past, but some things have changed. So
Injuries.
Correct. So my 3 is going to be obviously the Charlotte Hornets, currently at the 10 seed, which sucks. But
Tiebreakers over the Nets and I believe
And the Hawks.
and the Hawks and the Cavaliers. So I put
it's just those 2. If we end up all having the same record, we would be at 8.
yeah.
So, but
We're hoping for some losses from Atlanta and
the
Brooklyn.
team
Go
I
Knicks
think
tonight.
the team I think will win is the Phoenix Suns. Because, as I mentioned in a previous episode, they are so complete. They've only gotten better, and now they have Booker's back healthy, Chris Paul's back healthy, even though Booker only missed 1 to 2 games. But Chris Paul is looking great as ever, and that team, they're deep, and their bench has only gotten better. Their role players, and just overall, I really like that team. If they can make the finals last year, which, yes, some of the cards did fall in the right places, but I just really do like that team, and I think that they are going to make it just as far. My dark horse is once again the Dallas Mavericks, just because Luka is surrounded by all the right pieces. While they don't have 2 superstars, they have Luka and everybody else who could possibly make him and themselves better. I
Might
think
as well count as 2.
Yeah.
exactly. I
He's
mean,
insane.
that's very true, and I mean their bench looks really good. They shoot the ball really well, they pass the ball really well, and honestly just really like the team. If anyone is going to get some upsets and go far, I believe it's going to be the Dallas Mavericks. But you guys take it away. Give me your picks.
I like those picks. The team, obviously, Charlotte Hornets. I'm optimistic about how they've played to end the season. It's a lot different from last year where they were limping into the postseason. Everyone was hurt or had COVID, and they got smacked in the play-in tournament. I think it's a much different feeling and energy just around the team, despite last night's loss to the Heat. If they can finish strong, they get a good end of the schedule, I think they could really make some noise and bring playoff basketball back to Spectrum Center, something we haven't had in 6 years. But outside of the Hornets, I'm rooting for the Bulls. DeMar DeRozan is my guy. He's one of my favorite players ever. He's got the monkey on his back about the playoff issues, LeBronto, all that kind of stuff. But I'm just really hoping that he's been awesome all year for Chicago. If Lonzo Ball can get healthy, they can put it together in the postseason, maybe go on a little bit of a run. DeMar, go off, please. The team I think is going to win, Memphis Grizzlies. I think they're one of the best just all-around teams in the entire NBA. They had a little bit of a rough start to the season, which is the only reason they haven't caught up to the Suns, who have been awesome all year. Don't get me wrong, I think the Suns are awesome. I hope we get a Suns-Grizzlies Western Conference final, because I think that could be one of the best just playoff series we've had in years. Ja Morant, obviously all-world point guard, but it's what they've built around him that I think is really what's going to bring them to the promised land of winning the NBA Finals. They're 20-2 without Ja this year, and some people are like, oh, that means Ja's not that good. Ja isn't as important. It's really how good this team is around him. Dylan Brooks, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., who's been the best defender in the NBA since the calendar turned to 2022. His numbers on defense are insane. I think it's crazy that he isn't getting mentioned for the Defensive Player of the Year award that Giannis probably has a monopoly on by this point. But just their whole bench, their coaching staff, they have an outstanding atmosphere. I'm sure we've watched when ESPN goes to Memphis and they play like the Nets or the Suns. Their crowd is just awesome. Last year in the playoffs, it was outstanding. And then back when the Zach Randolph grit and grind Grizzlies, they were really renowned for how great the crowd really got up for the playoffs. I think they're going to make a huge run. They're going to be so fun to watch. I can't wait. And the dark horse team out of the East, give me the Toronto Raptors. I think Nick Nurse has built their rotation in a way that can really win in the postseason. They have shooters, Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent Jr. They have the exciting rookie with Scotty Barnes. Chris Boucher has been really impressive in his second year in the NBA. And Pascal Siakam, he got a really bad rap early in last year and during the bubble. He struggled mightily, but he's been outstanding this year. I've been really impressed with how he's bounced back. He's had almost a Julius Randle last year type resurgence, where he's just completely found his game again, and he's been so great at almost every aspect of the game. He's dropped, I think, almost 50 on the Celtics last week, and he's been out. I think the Raptors are a team. The East is super competitive. I think 3 through 6 are separated by 2 games. So the Raptors are currently in 6th, but they're far above the 7-seed Cavaliers. And another thing, the home court advantage goes beyond their awesome fan base. We all know the Raptors have just a super great fan base, but if they play like the Celtics in the postseason, Jaylen Brown, who isn't vaccinated, wouldn't be able to play in Toronto, or Kyrie in the playoffs if they had to play them sometime down the line. Yeah. I mean, it's not the greatest home court advantage. We're not going to get into any of that, of course.
Drake.
Yeah, Drake shows up.
Come on.
I mean, but that's a really interesting thing that could play into them stealing a game that ends up winning the series. If you can take care of business at home when the Celtics are playing without Jaylen Brown, and then you win a game in Boston, you've beaten the Celtics. And, of course, we don't know exactly who else isn't vaccinated in the NBA. We're not going to get into that, obviously. But it's just a really interesting thing that I think hasn't been mentioned.
It's a new dynamic.
Yeah, a new dynamic. Same thing with the Toronto Blue Jays with the MLB opening day tomorrow.
And to just very quickly before I let Spencer take it away, 2 things for you there. One, with your Grizzlies, Tyus Jones is great at making game-winning shots. More on that to come. And
Tyus Jones is a great player. I like Tyus Jones.
2, you guys should definitely listen to JP's takes, because once again, he is just a kid from Akron. Back to Spencer.
Just a kid from Akron. All right, so the team, of course, we're all Hornets fans here. I don't know how much, if they do get out of the play-in, I'm not sure how much noise they'll make in the first round. But as you mentioned, it'd be nice to just host a game in Spectrum Center, get the atmosphere there, because I think this team has a lot to build on.
Yeah.
They've steadily improved like by 10 wins each season since 2019, which has been awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely good to see. Team I think that'll win it all. I'm agreeing with JP here. I think it's going to be the Memphis Grizzlies. Last time we talked about this, I picked the Suns, and then I realized, I was like, I kept seeing my phone. I was like, man, the Grizzlies keep winning without easily their best player, and it is so crazy because if you take out, I mean, of course, the Suns also win without their best player, but he just hasn't been injured as frequently. But 20-2 without Ja Morant. I mean, let's say for example.
Tyus.
let's say you put
Because of Kyle Anderson.
take away slow-mo, but let's say you take away Luka from the Mavs. That team is not going 20-2 without Luka Doncic because he's so important. But the team they put around, as you mentioned, Ja Morant, it's incredible to see what they're doing over there. And, you already talked about it. I won't speak too much on it because I'm getting into my dark horse teams. I'll give you one from each conference because I think it's really interesting here. Give me the Denver Nuggets. For my MVP pick, Nikola Jokic. Embiid's had a fantastic week. So,
I've actually changed mine from a couple
wrong.
weeks ago when we did this. I think it's Giannis, but we're not going to get into that.
We could go about another hour and a half here just talking about the NBA. But I'm going Jokic and the Nuggets because I believe Jamal Murray and MPJ could be available sometime in the postseason.
I think so.
And he's just a problem. Jokic is just a problem.
He does it in so many different ways.
He's the point center, and he's so good at it. But so I think he's just a matchup nightmare, not only with himself, but for what he can do for his teammates. And in the East, I'm going to take the Cleveland Cavaliers because I think they make it out of the play-in because I think Darius Garland is definitely an emerging star in our league.
Which is really impressive. I think we got to touch on that. When his rookie year, he was the worst player in the entire NBA. And no one was shying away from saying that, even in a league where Frank Ntilikina existed. But I'm really impressed by how he's managed to improve his game and carry on.
Yeah. I mean, he's orchestrating this team without Colin Sexton, who I think he's now proven that he might be the more important guard of the two. I think he definitely has, because I don't think this team is where they are without Garland. A great facilitator, great shooter, and the top of the Eastern Conference is so tight, so it's not quite sure who they're going to get in their matchup. But they just pose some problems. I know Jared Allen is currently injured, and I don't think he's coming back. So that's definitely going to be an issue for them. Like if they were to match up with the Sixers, Embiid would probably drop about 50 a game,
or the Bucks.
50 and 20. Or nobody can guard Giannis.
That's true. That's true.
But I'd love to see this team make a run just because I think they're really exciting. And shockingly have brought the Cavs to the postseason. I don't think anybody expected them to be here or to Cleveland to have a team without LeBron.
I know. This is the
weird.
first time I think the Cavs have had success without LeBron since the early 90s.
Yeah, the Mark Price Cavs with the blue and orange logo.
And something, before we take it away into our last subject, something I'd like to say about the Grizzlies, which, not to go into it, but a hot take. Shout out to my guy, Per Sources, who gave us this NBA question idea. You should check his Instagram account out. But the Memphis Grizzlies, they're better without Ja Morant, but they need Ja Morant to win a championship.
Mm-hmm. So they're not better without him.
No, think about the layers behind
team.
that. Think about the layers behind that.
There's layers to this.
Okay.
Like onions.
Now, that'll be something we will touch on in further episodes. But if you are very into NBA basketball, I want you to really think about what that means, because that might be the Da Vinci Code of NBA basketball this season.
When the postseason gets around, I think this whole show might just be the NBA for 30-something
Oh yeah,
minutes.
very
be
could
doing
be.
There's something special about NBA postseason basketball.
Right. And lastly, I just wanted to, we just wanted to give you guys a little look into our personalities and sports journeys. So I wanted to each share our favorite sports memory from our lives. Mine, I'll just start and I'll say, as you guys might be able to guess, it's the 2015 national championship where Duke was able to take down Wisconsin. I loved that game because, we were favored to lose, and my mom, who is a Duke fan, she does her best to keep up, but that night she decided to go to bed before the game started. But my dad and my grandma and I were sitting down there watching it. My grandma, a little bit less basketball savvy, was knitting during most of the game. But my dad and I, we kept we would scream at something and then look at each other and be like, oh, shh. And then, but man, there was so many great moments in that. Grayson Allen came alive, to you guys' dismay. Tyus was a beast, as I said, his and one floater, where in the clip you can see he shot it, whistle was blown, and right after it was blown, that ball went in, and it was so cool. Grayson's just hype, fist pumping moments after he saved that loose ball, or I think he got fouled on it, whatever it was. And Tyus's three, where he turned around and showed the three hands and got on the cover of Sports Illustrated. There were so many great moments, especially towards the end of the game, where I think we went up 5. I think it was 66-61 at the time, maybe. And my grandma was sitting back with that amount of time left. She was like, "Oh, well, that surely means that the game is over." And my dad was like, "No!" And he had never ever doubted anything my grandma had said before that. But just, we're...
You don't jinx it, Tyler.
No,
you don't speak about it.
Especially in this region.
Right, we are very different demons when it comes to watching Duke basketball. But seeing the one shining moment, and, that was the first real national championship. I was alive and got to be able to watch the very end of the 2010 win for my favorite team as the Duke Blue Devils. But that was the first one as a evident basketball fan that I was able to see. So that's mine. You guys take it away, whichever one of y'all's ready.
You want to go first, or you want me to take it away?
You go, because mine's long-winded.
Okay, all right. I'll go first. First off, I want to say this is our women's basketball championship. This is the first time I've been at a celebration or been in the place where the team has won. Because I've seen Chapel Hill in 2009 and 17 win titles, but I wasn't in Chapel Hill. I'm not from there. Didn't venture out to see any of my other favorite teams win anything. Unfortunately, didn't get to go to a playoff Panthers game during their rise to glory, and then the disappointing Super Bowl 50 we won't talk on because we might just burst into tears. But I'll go with my favorite sports moment, Cubs winning the World Series. And my dad, lifelong Cubs fan, not from Chicago, but just because they didn't have lights for so long. They played during the day, and as a kid, he would watch them on TV.
They'd be on TV all the time, like the Braves.
Nice 1 to 4 p.m. slot, get home from school or during the summers. So that he just passed that on to me. So being able to watch the Cubs, and I think, of course, them being 108 years without a title, but just the 10 years prior, watching them struggle so bad.
Mm-hmm. And then get there and lose and and then struggle and then get there. And then that Game 7, one of the all-time best baseball games, I think, ever. The rain delay, Jason Hayward's speech in the dugout, right before they started, Kyle Schwarber coming back from the torn ACL. It was
a magical moment.
You'd call it cheesy if that was like a movie about a baseball team, that 2016 Cubs team.
I think my parents were definitely giving me a slack on my behavior. The Indians started coming back. I started throwing things. I was mad. I was like,
Aroldis Chapman blew it, and you're just.
I was like, they can't. No way they lose this. They can't crush an entire city's dreams. But they managed to pull it out after an epic rain delay speech from Jason Hayward, who didn't provide much else to the team, but
his defense. I will not allow Jason Hayward slander on this show.
I'm not slandering Jason Hayward. He's a great player. I think he's definitely one of my favorite personalities on the team. Definitely a fantastic leader to have, and he proved it as, everything was not going our way. And then God's gift, a nice little 20-minute rainstorm. They come back out, win the game after a locker room speech. And it was just great to see them in that drought, especially with my dad. Going to school the next day was probably the greatest accomplishment ever. I was so happy. I was like, they finally did it. It was just a great moment to see.
For me, it was very hard. There's a lot of moments that are kind of close to the top. The Carolina Panthers destroying the Cardinals in the NFC Championship back in 2016 to go to the Super Bowl. The Carolina Hurricanes in Game 7 against the defending Stanley Cup champions, beating the Washington Capitals in double overtime in Washington. in 2019 was outstanding.
That was awesome
The Atlanta Braves winning the World Series against the Dodgers against all odds, without Acuna, without Soroka, without Ozuna, without everyone. And they beat the Dodgers, and then they beat the Astros. I'm just disappointed and kind of sad I wasn't in Braves country when it happened. But the citizens of Louisville, Kentucky, knew that the Braves had just won with how I acted afterwards. But without a doubt, the number one. With some background context, I'm from Spartanburg, South Carolina, pretty close to Clemson, somewhat.
Ugly shade of orange.
My mom is
purple.
my mom is a huge Clemson fan. My sister goes to Clemson. My mom's family have had Clemson football season tickets since it was an A&M school. Everyone in the upstate is from Clemson. Not really, but my dad raised me to be a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan. 2020, Clemson plays Notre Dame. I'm in school the whole week leading up to it. I mean, because everyone in there, like 99% of the people at Spartan High were Clemson fans somewhat, or at least vocally against Notre Dame, which, it comes with the territory. But I didn't say anything. I didn't respond. I was like, I don't think we're going to win, but I'll just let what happens Saturday dictate how I respond. And then Notre Dame went out there in double overtime, beat number one Clemson, rushed the field, one of the best football games I've seen in a very long time. I'm biased, obviously, but one of the best Notre Dame football games of all time. And the next day, my mom got mad at us that night. My dad and I, we were celebrating, we were screaming when DJ Ongalele fumbled it and Notre Dame recovered in overtime. My mom got really mad at us, and so we left the house, rode around the neighborhood blaring the Notre Dame fight song with all the people with their Clemson flags on the porch because it was game day. Because he's from New Jersey, so he acts like that. That's where I got it from, being obnoxious all the time. If you listen to the Owl Sports Report, you'd know. But the next day at school, I showed up with my Notre Dame shoes on, my Notre Dame socks, my Notre Dame sweatpants, my Notre Dame jersey. I had a Notre Dame phone case. And I didn't say a word. I just walked around like I had just won the lottery. And it's the people who are South Carolina fans or hated Clemson fans. One of my football coaches was a Miami Hurricanes fan, and he just was smiling the whole time because we had practice that day, but I still showed up like that, all dressed up. And my mom had to stop me from wearing a leprechaun hat to school. But that's definitely one of the best moments, just with everything building up to it and the aftermath.
For sure. Well, if y'all are still here with us, I really appreciate y'all. I know we went a little over, but hey, man, it's another great episode. We really appreciate all you guys' support, and keep your eye out for this same time, same day next week, and we can't wait to get back at y'all with some more episodes. And as Don Staley once said, talk to me nice. See y'all later.